The Zephyrian Council chambers hummed with the soft blue glow of their crystalline technology as Ambassador Veltar presented the final details of what they called the Great Convergence. Around the circular hull, representatives from 12 alien species nodded their various appendages in agreement. The humans, they believed, would never see it coming. The mineral surveys have been distributed across 47 human colonies. Veltar's translator rendered his clicks and whistles into galactic standard. Each survey indicates massive deposits of quantum crystals beneath their settlements. The humans will relocate their populations to mine these resources, concentrating themselves in easily monitored locations. The Krillian representative, an insectoid creature with compound eyes that reflected the chamber's light, tapped her claws against the speaking podium. And the crystals themselves? Completely fabricated data, Veltar replied with what passed for satisfaction among his species. The scanning equipment we provided will show exactly what we programmed it to show. Once the humans have moved 70% of their population to these sites, we activate the orbital platforms. A murmur of approval rippled through the assembly. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Humanity had spread across the galaxy like a plague, establishing colonies faster than any species in recorded history. Their adaptability and aggressive expansion threatened the carefully maintained balance of power that had existed for millennia. The Zephyrian Council, representing the oldest and most advanced civilizations, had decided that humanity needed to be contained before they became unstoppable. The containment fields will be unbreachable, continued the ambassador. Quantum barriers that will prevent any human technology from passing through. They will be trapped on their mining worlds, unable to expand further, forced to focus on resource extraction for our benefit. The Altarian delegate, a tall being with skin that shifted colors based on emotion, glowed a satisfied green. How long until the humans take the bait? Our analysis of human psychology suggests they will begin major population movements within 6 months. They are driven by profit and the promise of easy resources. The surveys we've provided show deposits so rich that no human corporation could resist. What the Council didn't know was that Dr. Sarah Chen, head of the Human Colonial Survey Division, was sitting in her office on Earth at that very moment, staring at identical mineral reports from 47 different worlds. The data was too perfect, too convenient. In 30 years of geological survey work, she had never seen such uniformly rich deposits appear simultaneously across such a wide area of space. She pulled up the scanning data again, running it through analysis programs that the alien-provided equipment supposedly couldn't perform. The results made her blood run cold. The quantum signatures were artificial, generated by some kind of projection technology. Someone was trying to manipulate humanity into concentrating their populations on specific worlds. Sarah reached for her secure communication device, one that used purely human technology and couldn't be monitored by alien systems. Within hours, her message had reached Admiral James Morrison, commander of the Human Defense Fleet, and Dr. Rebecca Walsh, head of the Colonial Defense Intelligence Agency. They think we're greedy fools who'll fall for fool's gold, Admiral Morrison said during the emergency session held in the deep underground bunkers beneath Geneva. But they've made a critical error in their assessment of human nature. Dr. Walsh nodded, her fingers dancing across holographic displays showing the locations of all 47 surveyed worlds. They're not wrong about our drive for resources, but they've underestimated our paranoia. We've been waiting for something like this since we first made contact. The truth was that humanity had been preparing for betrayal since their first encounter with alien civilization. While they had engaged in trade and diplomacy, human military strategists had never stopped planning for the possibility that their new neighbors might decide humanity was a threat. The rapid expansion of human colonies wasn't just about resources or Lebensraum. It was about creating a civilization too spread out and too adaptable to be easily destroyed. "What's our response?" asked Sarah, who had been granted emergency security clearance for her discovery. Admiral Morrison smiled grimly. "We spring their trap, but not the way they expect. If they want to concentrate our population, we'll give them exactly what they want to see, but we'll be ready for whatever comes next." Within weeks, the Human Colonial Administration announced a massive new mining initiative. Press releases spoke of unprecedented mineral wealth and the opportunity for rapid colonial development. To any observer, it appeared that humanity had taken the bait completely, but appearances can be deceiving. As the first ships began departing for the surveyed worlds, they carried more than eager miners and their families. Hidden within the cargo holds and disguised as mining equipment were components for defensive systems that no alien species had ever encountered. Human engineers had been busy during their decades of galactic expansion, developing technologies that appeared primitive to alien observers but incorporated principles that their enemies didn't understand. The Zephyrian Council watched with satisfaction as human populations began to concentrate on the target worlds. Their plan was working perfectly. What they didn't realize was that humanity's greatest strength had never been their technology or their military might. It was their ability to learn, adapt, and turn their enemies' plans against them. As the last transport ships approached the mining worlds, Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the flagship Defiance, hidden in the shadow of a distant moon. "All stations report ready," his communications officer announced. "Then let's show them what happens when you try to cage humanity," Morrison replied. "Activate Phoenix Protocol." Across 47 worlds, systems that had been carefully disguised as mining equipment began to power up. The aliens had built a trap for humanity, but they were about to discover that humans had been building traps of their own. Ambassador Veltar watched the holographic displays with growing excitement as human transport ships continued arriving at the designated mining worlds. The population concentration was proceeding even faster than their models had predicted. Humans were practically throwing themselves into the trap. "Initiate Phase 2, he commanded. Across the galaxy, Zephyrian orbital platforms began descending from their hiding places in asteroid fields and gas giant atmospheres. These massive structures had been positioned months ago, waiting for this moment. Each platform carried quantum barrier generators capable of creating impenetrable force fields around entire planets. On the mining world designated as Target Alpha 7, colonist Maria Santos was unloading supplies from her transport when she noticed something strange in the sky. A massive shadow was growing larger by the minute, blotting out the twin suns. Around her, other colonists stopped their work to stare upward at the approaching alien vessel. "That's not one of ours," muttered Jake Morrison, a mining engineer who had served in the Colonial Defense Forces. His hand instinctively moved to the emergency communicator hidden in his tool belt. "Maria, get everyone to the emergency shelters now." But Maria wasn't moving toward shelter. Instead, she was pulling a small device from her pocket and speaking into it in a code that Jake didn't recognize. "Phoenix Nest, this is Firebird 7. The Hawk is in the henhouse." "Repeat, the Hawk is in the henhouse." Jake stared at her in confusion. "Maria, what the hell are you doing?" She looked at him with eyes that had suddenly become very cold and professional. "My job, Jake. I'm Lieutenant Commander Santos, Human Intelligence Division. And you need to get everyone into the, shelters right now because this is about to get very interesting." Similar scenes were playing out across all 47 worlds as the Zephyrian platforms moved into position. But what the aliens couldn't see were the conversations happening in hidden communication networks. As hundreds of undercover military personnel revealed themselves and began coordinating responses, the truth was that nearly 30% of the colonists on each world were actually military personnel in disguise. The human defense forces had been infiltrating their own colonies for months, preparing for exactly this scenario. While the aliens had been planning their trap, humanity had been setting up countermeasures. Captain Elena Vasquez stood in what appeared to be a mining equipment warehouse on target Beta 12, but at her command, the walls slid away to reveal a fully operational military command center. Banks of computers hummed to life, and holographic displays showed the positions of every alien platform in the system. "All units, this is Phoenix Command. Execute Revelation Protocol on my mark," she spoke into her headset. Around the warehouse, dozens of shipping containers began to transform, their sides unfolding to reveal advanced defensive systems that looked nothing like any technology the aliens had ever seen. Above the planet, the Zephyrian platform commander felt a moment of confusion as his sensors detected energy signatures that shouldn't exist. Human technology was supposed to be primitive, barely capable of faster-than-light travel, but the readings his instruments were showing suggested something far more advanced. "Scan the planet's surface again," he ordered his crew. Something is wrong. The scan results made his equivalent of blood run cold. The mining equipment was transforming into weapon systems. The prefabricated shelters were revealing themselves as armored bunkers. And the energy readings? The energy readings were off the charts. "Sir, His sensor operator reported, voice trembling. "I'm detecting quantum manipulation technology. That's impossible. Humans don't have quantum manipulation technology." But they did. While humanity had allowed the galaxy to believe they were technologically inferior, their scientists had been working in secret, developing weapons and defenses based on principles that other species had never encountered. The key was that human technology didn't work the way alien technology worked. Where other species had focused on energy projection and quantum manipulation, humans had focused on something much more fundamental: matter conversion and dimensional folding. The mining equipment rising from the surface of Target Alpha 7 didn't look impressive to alien eyes. It appeared crude, mechanical, almost primitive. But when Captain Sarah Kim activated the first defensive array, reality itself seemed to bend around the device. The Zephyrian quantum barrier generator fired its containment field toward the planet's surface, a beam of energy that should have created an impenetrable prison. Instead, the beam encountered Sarah's defensive array and simply disappeared, absorbed into what appeared to be a small, black cube that couldn't have been more than 2 meters on each side. "That's not possible," whispered the platform commander as his instruments registered that his most powerful weapon had simply ceased to exist. "What did they do to our barrier beam?" Sarah Kim smiled as she watched her readings. "Dimensional folding technology," she said to her team. "We've been folding their energy weapons into pocket dimensions and storing them. Every shot they fire at us just makes our own weapons more powerful." The revelation struck the alien fleet like a thunderbolt. Humanity hadn't just seen their trap coming. They had turned it into a trap of their own. Every orbital platform was now facing not a helpless colony world, but a fully armed military installation that was literally eating their weapons and growing stronger. On the flagship of the Zephyrian fleet, Ambassador Veltar received reports from all 47 platforms simultaneously. Every single one was reporting the same impossible situation. Their quantum barriers were being absorbed, their energy weapons were disappearing into dimensional pockets, and the humans were revealing technology that shouldn't exist. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Our intelligence said they were barely capable of interstellar flight." His intelligence chief, a being whose species specialized in data analysis and prediction, was frantically reviewing their files on humanity. "Sir, I believe we may have made a fundamental error in our assessment. We analyzed their public technology and their trade goods, but we never considered that they might be deliberately hiding their true capabilities. The truth was even more disturbing than that. Humanity had not only been hiding their technology, they had been feeding false information to alien intelligence networks for decades. Every trade agreement, every technology exchange, every diplomatic contact had been carefully orchestrated to maintain the illusion that humanity was a young, primitive species stumbling through the galaxy. Meanwhile, human scientists had been reverse engineering alien technology and developing countermeasures. They had learned to manipulate quantum fields, to fold space-time, and to convert matter at the subatomic level. But they had kept these discoveries secret, waiting for the day when the older species would inevitably try to eliminate the human threat. That day had finally come, and humanity was ready. The panic spreading through the Zephyrian fleet was unlike anything in their recorded history. For over 2,000 years, they had been the undisputed masters of quantum technology. Their civilization had built its dominance on the ability to manipulate reality at the fundamental level. Now they were watching human devices casually absorb their most powerful weapons as if they were nothing more than flashlight beams. Admiral Veltar's mandibles clicked frantically as he processed the incoming reports. "All platforms concentrate fire on Target Alpha 7, maximum quantum bombardment. If we can overwhelm one of their dimensional absorption devices, we might be able to break through their defenses." The order went out across the fleet, and 12 orbital platforms turned their combined firepower toward the human colony world. Quantum disruptors, reality shapers, and dimensional cannons all fired simultaneously, creating a storm of energy that should have torn the planet apart at the molecular level. On the surface, Captain Sarah Kim watched her instruments as her dimensional absorption array processed the incoming assault. The cube-shaped device hummed with increasing intensity, its surface beginning to glow with an inner light as it folded the alien weapons fire into pocket dimensions for storage. "Capacity at 60% and climbing," reported her chief engineer, Lieutenant Commander Jackson Park. These dimensional pockets can hold a lot more than this. Sarah nodded. Let them exhaust themselves. Every joule they fire at us is energy we can use later. She activated her communication system. Phoenix Command, this is Firebird Alpha 7. The enemy has taken the bait. Beginning Phase 3. Around the galaxy, similar messages were being transmitted from all 47 colony worlds. The aliens had concentrated their forces exactly where humanity wanted them. And now it was time to reveal the true scope of the human counterstrike. In the hidden command bunker beneath Geneva, Admiral Morrison watched as tactical displays showed the positions of every alien vessel in the galaxy. The Zephyrian Council believed they had humanity trapped, but they had actually concentrated their own forces in a way that made them incredibly vulnerable. All stealth fleets begin approach, Morrison commanded. Time to show our guests that humans aren't the only ones who can spring a surprise. Across space, what appeared to be empty void began to shimmer as hundreds of human warships decloaked. These vessels had been waiting in perfect silence for months, their crews in cryogenic suspension to avoid detection, their ships powered down to background radiation levels. They had used technology that the aliens couldn't detect, because it didn't rely on any of the energy signatures that alien sensors were designed to recognize. The human stealth technology was based on something much simpler than quantum manipulation, thermal dynamics, and gravitational anchoring. By matching their ship's temperature to the cosmic background radiation and using microgravity generators to eliminate their mass signatures, human vessels could become effectively invisible to alien detection methods. Captain Maria Rodriguez felt the familiar sensation of awakening from cryosleep as her ship, the Retribution, powered up its systems. Around her, the bridge crew was already at their stations, monitoring the alien fleet positions that had been updated automatically during their long wait. All systems green, reported her tactical officer. The enemy platforms are exactly where intelligence predicted they would be. Maria smiled grimly. Then let's give them something to really worry about. Arm the Singularity torpedoes. The Singularity torpedo was humanity's most closely guarded secret. While alien civilizations had developed increasingly complex weapons based on energy manipulation, human scientists had taken a different approach. They had learned to create artificial microscopic black holes, contain them in magnetic bottles, and launch them as weapons that could consume anything they encountered. The beauty of the Singularity torpedo was its simplicity. It didn't rely on quantum fields or dimensional manipulation. It was just a small piece of collapsed matter that followed the basic laws of physics, laws that were universal and unchangeable, regardless of how advanced a civilization's technology might be. The first torpedo struck the Zephyrian platform above target Alpha 7 before its crew even realized they were under attack. The microscopic singularity began consuming the platform's hull, growing larger with each molecule it absorbed. Within minutes, the massive orbital fortress was collapsing in on itself, its quantum barrier generators and reality manipulation devices powerless against the fundamental force of gravity. What is that? Ambassador Veltar screamed as he watched his flagship's sister ship implode. What weapon are they using? His science officer's voice was barely a whisper. Sir, it appears to be an artificial black hole. I don't understand how such a thing is possible with their technology level. But that was the problem with the aliens' assessment of humanity. They had always assumed that technological advancement meant increasing complexity, more sophisticated manipulation of exotic forces, greater reliance on quantum effects. They had never considered that true advancement might mean learning to use simple principles in more effective ways. Human technology wasn't more complex than alien technology. It was more fundamental. While the Zephyrians had learned to bend reality, humans had learned to use reality's own rules against their enemies. A black hole didn't care about quantum barriers or dimensional shields. It simply consumed everything in its path according to the basic laws of physics. More Singularity torpedoes were launching from the decloaked human fleet, each one targeted at a different alien platform. The orbital fortresses that had seemed so invincible moments ago were now desperately trying to retreat. But escape was impossible. The human fleet had positioned itself perfectly to prevent any avenue of withdrawal. Dr. Rebecca Walsh watched the battle unfold from her command center, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. The deception had worked perfectly, but she took no joy in the destruction that was following. Signal all human vessels, she ordered. Once the platforms are neutralized, We offer surrender terms to the surviving alien crews. This was perhaps the most human element of the entire operation. Even in the midst of what appeared to be a devastating military victory, humanity was already thinking about mercy, about how to end the conflict with the least possible loss of life. It was a concept that the Zephyrian Council had never factored into their calculations. On Target Alpha 7, Captain Sarah Kim watched the destruction of the orbital platform through her observation dome. The alien vessel that had seemed so threatening was now nothing more than a rapidly shrinking point of light, as the artificial black hole consumed it completely. Phoenix Command. "This is Firebird Alpha 7, she reported. "Local threats neutralized. Beginning humanitarian preparations for alien survivors." Lieutenant Commander Park looked at her in confusion. "Humanitarian preparations? Captain, these aliens just tried to imprison our entire species." Sarah nodded. "Yes, they did. And now they're going to learn what it really means to deal with humanity. We don't just fight to win, Jackson. We fight to create a better galaxy for everyone." The aftermath of the battle left the Zephyrian Council in complete disarray. Of their 47 orbital platforms, only 12 had managed to escape destruction, and those were badly damaged. The escape pods from the destroyed platforms were being collected by human rescue ships, whose crews were providing medical assistance to the same aliens who had moments ago been trying to imprison humanity. Ambassador Veltar found himself in the medical bay of the human vessel Compassion, staring at the ceiling while a human doctor tended to injuries he had sustained when his platform's bridge collapsed. The irony was not lost on him. The species he had tried to cage was now saving his life. Why? He asked Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the ship's chief medical officer and sister to the intelligence director. "Why are you helping us after what we tried to do?" Dr. Walsh looked up from her scanner, her expression serious but not hostile. "Because that's what humans do. We don't fight because we enjoy it. We fight because sometimes it's necessary to protect ourselves and others. But once the fighting is over, we try to heal." The concept was alien to the Zephyrian mindset. In their experience, conflicts ended with the complete subjugation or elimination of the defeated party. The idea that the victors would then provide aid to their former enemies seemed not just strange but dangerously naive. "You realize this will be seen as weakness by the other species," Veltar said. "The Krillians, the Altarians, the other council members, they will view your mercy as an opportunity to strike again." Dr. Walsh smiled. "Let them try. We've been preparing for that possibility too." What the ambassador didn't know was that the battle at the mining worlds was only the first phase of humanity's response. While the orbital platforms were being destroyed, other human forces were carrying out simultaneous operations across the galaxy. Every major alien military installation, every council fleet base, every strategic resource depot was under attack by human forces that seemed to appear from nowhere. On the Krillian homeworld, General Clixthera was receiving reports that defied explanation. Human ships were emerging from hyperspace directly inside the defense perimeter of their most secure military bases, but that was impossible. Their early warning system should have detected any approaching fleet days before it arrived. "How are they getting past our sensors?" she demanded of her intelligence chief. "Unknown, General. They appear to be using some form of hyperspace manipulation that our detection grids cannot register. Their ships are materializing inside our defensive lines with no advance warning." The truth was that human scientists had solved a problem that had puzzled alien civilizations for millennia, while other species had developed faster-than-light travel by entering hyperspace and traveling through it. Humans had learned to manipulate hyperspace itself. They could create localized space-time distortions that allowed their ships to step sideways through dimensions, emerging at their destination without having traveled through the intervening space. Captain Marcus Chen brought his destroyer Persistence out of dimensional fold space directly above the Krillian fleet headquarters. Around him, a dozen other human vessels were materializing in perfect formation, their weapons already locked onto critical targets. "Broadcasting surrender terms now," reported his communications officer. "General Clixthera has 30 seconds to respond before we begin our attack." The Krillian general found herself faced with an impossible choice. Her forces were powerful, but they were positioned to defend against attacks from space, not from ships that could appear in the middle of her formation. The humans had negated every tactical advantage her people possessed. "This is General Clixthera," she transmitted. "I require clarification of your terms." Captain Chen's response was broadcast across all Krillian communication channels. "Complete cessation of hostile actions against humanity and its allies. Withdrawal of all Council forces to your respective home systems. Immediate release of any human prisoners or detained personnel. Agreement to participate in peace negotiations under neutral oversight. And if we refuse, then we demonstrate that our mercy is a choice, not a weakness." Similar conversations were taking place throughout the galaxy as human forces revealed the true scope of their military capabilities. The species that had seemed barely capable of interstellar travel was now dictating terms to civilizations that had controlled the galaxy for thousands of years. On the Altarian capital world, the color-changing beings who served as the Council's diplomatic corps were experiencing emotions that had no names in their language. The shifting hues of their skin reflected confusion, fear, and something that might have been respect. Ambassador Threnodar watched human ships in orbit above his world and marveled at the elegance of their strategy. "They never intended to fight a defensive war," he said to his aide. "This entire operation was designed to draw us into a position where they could strike at all of us simultaneously. How could we have missed this?" His aide asked. "Because we made the same mistake that has doomed conquerors throughout history," Threnodar replied. "We underestimated our enemy. We saw what we wanted to see, a young, naive species that could be easily controlled. We never considered that their apparent weakness might be deliberate misdirection." Back on Earth, in the deep command bunker beneath Geneva, Admiral Morrison was coordinating the largest military operation in human history. Holographic displays showed the status of human forces across dozens of star systems, all reporting successful completion of their objectives. "Phase 4 is complete," reported his operations chief. "All major Council military assets are neutralized or under our control. Enemy casualties are minimal thanks to their acceptance of surrender terms." Morrison nodded with satisfaction. "And Phase 5? "Ready to proceed on your command, sir. Though I have to ask, are you sure about this? We have them beaten. We could dictate any terms we wanted." Morrison looked at the displays showing the defeated alien fleets, their crews now under human protection. "That's exactly why we're proceeding with Phase 5, Colonel. We didn't fight this war to become the new galactic overlords. We fought it to ensure that no one could be galactic overlords. Phase 5 of the human operation was perhaps the most ambitious part of their entire strategy. Having demonstrated their ability to defeat any opposition, humanity was now prepared to voluntarily limit their own power. They were about to propose something that no victorious species in galactic history had ever suggested. A true democratic galactic government with built-in safeguards to prevent any single species from achieving dominance. Dr. Rebecca Walsh activated the galaxy-wide communication system that would broadcast to every inhabited world. "Citizens of the galaxy," she began, "the crisis that threatened to divide us has ended. But our work is just beginning. Humanity extends an invitation to all species to participate in the creation of a new galactic order, one based not on the dominance of the strong over the weak, but on cooperation, mutual respect, and the protection of all sentient life." The message continued for several minutes, outlining humanity's proposal for a federated galactic government with representation for all species, regardless of their technological level or military strength. It was a revolutionary concept that challenged thousands of years of galactic history. As the transmission ended, Ambassador Veltar turned to Dr. Walsh. "You're serious about this, aren't you? You really intend to share power with the species that just tried to imprison you?" "Yes," she replied simply, "because that's the only way to build a galaxy worth living in." The galactic response to humanity's proposal was as varied as the species themselves. In the crystal spires of the Zephyrian homeworld, the surviving council members debated an emergency session. The holographic images of their colleagues appeared fractured and unstable, reflecting the chaos that had engulfed their civilization. "They could have destroyed us completely," admitted Counselor Yethkar, his crystalline form pulsing with confused colors. "Their weapons technology is beyond our understanding, yet they offer us equal partnership in this new government they propose." Elder Velmorak, the oldest member of the council, had lived through the rise and fall of 3 galactic empires. His ancient wisdom carried weight even in these unprecedented circumstances. I have seen conquerors come and go. They all follow the same pattern: victory, domination, eventual decay. But I have never encountered a species that wins a war and then voluntarily limits its own power. The debate continued for days, broadcast live across the galaxy as per humanity's insistence on transparent governance. For the first time in galactic history, ordinary citizens could watch their leaders wrestle with decisions that would affect billions of lives. On the industrial world of Kepler 442b, factory worker Zara Chen paused in her welding to watch the proceedings on her helmet display. Around her, humans and aliens worked side by side on the construction of what would become the first integrated colony ship designed by multiple species. The war had ended so quickly that many people were still trying to understand what had happened. "My grandfather fought in the corporate wars," she said to her Altarian co-worker, Threnville, whose skin was cycling through thoughtful blue hues. "He always said that humans fight best when they're fighting for something, not just against something." Threnville's color shifted to curious yellow. "What do you mean?" "We didn't just want to defeat the Council," Zara explained, removing her helmet to better make her point. "We wanted to create something better. That's why we're winning the peace as well as the war." This sentiment was echoing across human space as civilians began to understand the scope of what their military had accomplished. The war had been fought not just to defend humanity, but to fundamentally change the nature of galactic civilization. It was an idea that resonated with people who had grown up hearing stories of endless conflicts between species driven by fear and competition. On the research station orbiting Proxima Centauri, Dr. Elena Vasquez was working with a team of multi-species scientists to analyze the technology that had made human victory possible. The aliens were particularly fascinated by the dimensional folding technology that had allowed human weapons to simply absorb their attacks. "The mathematics are elegant," admitted Dr. Krextol, a Krillian physicist whose compound eyes were perfectly adapted for processing complex equations. "You've essentially created pocket universes to store energy and matter. But how did you develop this without our knowledge?" Dr. Vasquez smiled as she manipulated the holographic display, showing the quantum structures involved. "We've had help, not from any alien species, but from the galaxy itself. Every asteroid belt we've mined, every gas giant we've explored, every ancient relic we've discovered, they all taught us something about how the universe really works." The truth was that humanity's rapid technological advancement had been driven by their unique approach to scientific research. While other species had developed along specialized lines, becoming masters of specific technologies, humans had maintained a broad-based curiosity about everything. They had studied alien technology not to copy it, but to understand the underlying principles and then find better ways to achieve the same results. "Your species has a saying," Dr. Krextol observed. "Standing on the shoulders of giants?" "Exactly," Elena replied. "We built on the knowledge of every species we encountered, then found our own path forward. The dimensional folding technology came from studying Zephyrian quantum manipulation, Altarian matter conversion, and Krillian energy projection. But we combined those principles with human engineering pragmatism. This collaborative approach was already bearing fruit in the post-war period. Human scientists were sharing their discoveries freely with their former enemies, while alien researchers were beginning to understand that cooperation could achieve more than competition. The first joint research projects were producing technologies that none of the species could have developed alone. Meanwhile, the political landscape was shifting rapidly. The Krillian Collective had been the first to formally accept humanity's proposal for a federated galactic government. General Klixthara had surprised everyone by becoming one of the strongest advocates for the new system. "We have fought each other for millennia," she declared in a speech that was broadcast across both human and Krillian space. "We have achieved nothing but endless cycles of war and suffering. The humans offer us something different, a chance to build instead of destroy, to create instead of conquer." The Altarian Confederation followed soon after, with Ambassador Threnadar leading the negotiations for integration. His people's ability to change color based on emotion made them natural diplomats, and they were already proposing refinements to the human governmental structure that would better accommodate species with different psychological makeups. Even the Zephyrian Council was beginning to fracture as younger members pushed for acceptance of the human proposal. The old guard, led by Ambassador Veltar, argued for maintaining their traditional isolation, but they were fighting a losing battle against the tide of change sweeping the galaxy. Dr. Rebecca Walsh found herself in the unusual position of trying to convince her former enemies to accept terms that were far more generous than anyone expected. In a private meeting with Veltar on the neutral space station that had been hastily constructed for the peace negotiations, she tried to address his concerns. "You fear that humanity will eventually dominate this new government," she said, "that our current generosity is a temporary strategy that will give way to tyranny once we have consolidated power." Veltar's translator rendered his response with obvious skepticism. "Exactly. No species gives up power voluntarily. It defies the natural order." Rebecca smiled and activated a holographic display showing the proposed governmental structure. "Then you don't understand humans very well. We've never wanted to rule the galaxy, Veltar. We just wanted to be free to live our lives and explore the universe. The only reason we developed this military capability was to ensure that no one could take that freedom away from us." The display showed a complex system of checks and balances designed to prevent any single species or coalition from gaining excessive power. Term limits, rotating leadership, and mandatory power-sharing agreements were all built into the foundation of the proposed government. "Besides," Rebecca continued, "we've already demonstrated our commitment to limiting our own power. Every human military vessel in the galaxy is being retrofitted with control systems that require multi-species crews to operate. We're literally making it impossible for humanity to wage war without the consent of our partners." This voluntary limitation of human military power was perhaps the most convincing evidence of their sincerity. No conquering species in galactic history had ever deliberately weakened their own forces while negotiating from a position of strength. It was an act that spoke louder than any diplomatic promises. 6 months after the failed trap, the galaxy was transforming in ways that no one had imagined possible. The neutral space station that had begun as a simple diplomatic meeting point had evolved into a sprawling complex called Unity Station, where representatives from over 200 species were working together to draft the charter for the new Galactic Federation. Captain Sarah Kim walked through the station's main concourse, marveling at the sight of beings who had been enemies just months ago now, collaborating on engineering projects, sharing meals in integrated cafeterias, and debating policy in mixed-species committees. The transformation had been so rapid that it sometimes felt surreal. "Sarah," called a familiar voice. She turned to see Dr. Elena Vasquez approaching with a group of alien scientists, their various forms creating a colorful parade of galactic diversity. "Perfect timing. We just had a breakthrough on the Universal Translation Matrix." The translation problem had been one of the biggest challenges facing the new Federation. While most species had developed translation technology, the nuances of meaning often got lost between different forms of communication. Some species communicated through color changes, others through chemical emissions, still others through complex mathematical concepts that had no direct linguistic equivalent. "We figured out how to integrate quantum consciousness mapping with emotional resonance patterns," Elena explained, her excitement evident. "Instead of just translating words, we can now translate intent and emotional context across species barriers." Dr. Krextol, the Krillian physicist, added his own observations. "The implications extend beyond simple communication. We may have created the foundation for true empathetic understanding between species." This breakthrough represented something much larger than technological advancement. It symbolized the fundamental shift that was occurring throughout the galaxy. Instead of focusing on differences and potential conflicts, the combined scientific communities were working to bridge the gaps between species and create genuine understanding. Meanwhile, in the political chambers of Unity Station, the debates were becoming increasingly sophisticated as representatives learned to work within the new democratic framework. The Zephyrian delegation had finally agreed to join the Federation, but only after negotiating for special protections for their unique crystalline technology. Ambassador Veltar, who had become something of a celebrity as the alien leader who had tried to trap humanity, was now serving as chair of the Technology Sharing Committee. The irony was not lost on anyone, but his expertise in quantum manipulation made him invaluable in the effort to integrate different technological approaches. "The humans have taught us something important," he said during a committee session that was being broadcast live across the galaxy. True strength comes not from hoarding knowledge, but from sharing it. My people spent centuries protecting our secrets, thinking that our technological advantages made us secure. But security built on secrecy is ultimately fragile. His words carried particular weight because they came from someone who had personally experienced the consequences of underestimating human capabilities. The Zephyrian Council's attempt to trap humanity had failed precisely because they had operated in secrecy, making decisions based on incomplete information and false assumptions. The new Federation was being built on the opposite principle: complete transparency and open information sharing. Every technological breakthrough, every political decision, every economic agreement was subject to public scrutiny by all member species. It was a radical departure from the secretive, hierarchical systems that had dominated the galaxy for millennia. Admiral Morrison found himself in the unprecedented position of commanding a truly integrated military force. Human, Altarian, Krillian, and Zephyrian officers served side by side on ships that incorporated the best technologies from all species. The dimensional folding systems developed by humans were now being enhanced with Zephyrian quantum manipulation and Altarian matter conversion technology. We've created something that no single species could have achieved alone, he told his mixed species senior staff during their weekly briefing. Our new exploration vessels can travel faster, farther, and more safely than anything in galactic history. The exploration program had become the Federation's most popular initiative. Instead of competing for resources and territory, the member species were now working together to explore the unknown regions of the galaxy. The discovery of new worlds and civilizations was becoming a shared adventure, rather than a source of potential conflict. Commander Maria Santos, who had revealed herself as an intelligence officer during the failed trap, was now leading one of these exploration missions. Her ship, the Harmony, carried a crew of 60 beings representing 12 different species. Their mission was to investigate anomalous signals from the galactic rim, a region that no species had ever successfully explored. Contact established with unknown civilization in the Kepler 442 system, reported her communications officer, a young Altarian whose skin was cycling through excited green hues. They appear to be sending mathematical progressions, possibly a first contact protocol. Maria smiled as she watched her diverse crew work together to decode the signals. This was exactly what the Federation was supposed to accomplish. Peaceful exploration and first contact procedures that emphasize cooperation rather than conquest. Begin standard first contact procedures, she ordered. And remember, we represent not just our own species, but the ideal that different civilizations can work together for mutual benefit. Back on Unity Station, Dr. Rebecca Walsh was putting the finishing touches on what would become known as the Galactic Charter of Rights. The document established fundamental protections for all sentient beings, regardless of their species, technology level, or political system. It was perhaps humanity's most important contribution to galactic civilization. The idea that rights were universal and inalienable. We've learned from Earth's history, she explained to a gathering of constitutional scholars from across the galaxy. The greatest source of conflict has always been the belief that some beings are inherently more valuable than others. This charter establishes that sentience itself is the only qualification for basic rights. The document was revolutionary in its scope. It established rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of knowledge for all sentient beings. It guaranteed protection from slavery, genocide, and forced relocation. Most importantly, it created mechanisms for enforcing these rights that didn't depend on the military power of any single species. As the months passed, the transformation of galactic civilization continued to accelerate. Trade networks that had been based on exploitation and resource extraction were being replaced by cooperative agreements that benefited all participants. Scientific research was advancing at unprecedented rates as different species shared their knowledge and methodologies. The old fear-based approach to interstellar relations was giving way to something that had never existed before in galactic history: a civilization based on trust, cooperation, and mutual respect. The species that had tried to trap humanity had inadvertently triggered the creation of exactly the kind of galaxy that humans had always dreamed of living in. We didn't just escape their trap. Admiral Morrison observed during a ceremony commemorating the first anniversary of the failed attack. We turned it into a doorway to the future. 5 years had passed since the Zephyrian Council's failed attempt to trap humanity, and the galaxy had become unrecognizable to those who remembered the old order. The sprawling metropolis that had grown around Unity Station now served as the capital of the Galactic Federation, a bustling center of commerce, diplomacy, and learning where beings from over 300 species lived and worked together. Dr. Sarah Chen, the geologist whose suspicions had first uncovered the alien plot, stood on the observation deck of the Federation Science Institute, watching ships from dozens of different civilizations arrive and depart in perfect coordination. The traffic control system that managed this complexity was itself a marvel of cooperative engineering, combining human logistics algorithms with Altarian intuitive processing and Zephyrian quantum prediction models. "Hard to believe it all started with fake mineral surveys," said a familiar voice behind her. Sarah turned to see Admiral Morrison, now serving as the Federation's Secretary of Defense, approaching with a small group of visitors. "Everything starts somewhere," Sarah replied, smiling at the mixed species delegation he was escorting. "Sometimes the smallest lie reveals the biggest truth." The delegation included Ambassador Veltar, whose crystalline form had taken on new patterns since his integration into Federation society. Beside him walked General Clixithara, whose Krillian carapace bore decorative modifications that indicated her new role as head of the Federation peacekeeping forces. The third member of the group was someone Sarah hadn't expected to see, Thranadar, the former Altarian diplomat who had become the Federation's first president. "We wanted to visit the place where it all began," Thranadar explained, his skin displaying the warm golden hues that indicated contentment among his people. "The mineral processing facility where you first detected our deception." They walked together through the Institute's halls, past laboratories where teams of multi-species researchers worked on projects that would have been impossible under the old system. The quantum biology lab was developing medical treatments that worked across species barriers. The dimensional engineering department was designing transportation systems that could move entire populations between star systems in a matter of hours. "The irony is almost poetic," Veltar observed as they passed a display showing the original fake mineral surveys that had triggered the crisis. "We created false evidence of valuable resources to lure your people into a trap. Instead, we created real evidence of the most valuable resource in the galaxy, the ability to work together." The transformation hadn't been without challenges. Cultural misunderstandings, technological integration problems, and political disagreements had all threatened to derail the Federation during its early years. The breakthrough had come when human psychologists had proposed treating the Federation not as a political entity, but as a living organism that needed to develop its own immune system against conflict. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, now serving as the Federation's Health and Wellness Director, had pioneered the field of interspecies psychology. Her work had led to the development of conflict resolution protocols that addressed not just the immediate issues in disputes, but the underlying psychological and cultural factors that created tension between different species. The key insight was recognizing that most conflicts arise from fear and misunderstanding, she explained to a group of newly arrived species representatives who were touring the facility. When beings understand each other's motivations and constraints, cooperation becomes natural. This understanding had been put to the test when the Federation encountered the hegemony, a militaristic alliance of species from the galactic core, who viewed the Federation's cooperative approach as weakness. The resulting conflict had been brief but decisive, demonstrating that the Federation's military capabilities had only grown stronger through integration. Captain Maria Rodriguez, now commanding the Federation flagship Determination, had led the response to the hegemony's invasion attempt. Her ship incorporated technologies from 17 different species, creating capabilities that far exceeded anything the old galactic powers had possessed. "They made the same mistake the Council made," she reported during the post-battle analysis. "They assumed that cooperation meant weakness, that diversity meant vulnerability. Instead, our integrated approach gave us tactical options they couldn't predict or counter." The hegemony's defeat had been so complete that their surviving leaders had requested immediate integration into the Federation. Like the Council species before them, they had discovered that fighting the Federation was far less appealing than joining it. This pattern had repeated itself across the galaxy, as more civilizations encountered the Federation. The combination of superior technology, effective diplomacy, and genuine commitment to mutual benefit made membership attractive even to species that had initially viewed the Federation as a threat. The most recent addition to the Federation was perhaps the most significant: the Ancient Ones, a species so old that they had been considered mythical by most galactic civilizations. These beings had watched the rise and fall of dozens of galactic empires, but they had emerged from their hidden worlds specifically to join the Federation. Elder Zix-Thala, whose species had existed for over 50 million years, had explained their decision in terms that resonated across the galaxy. In all our vast experience, we have never encountered a civilization that deliberately chose to limit its own power in service of the greater good. This Federation represents something genuinely new in the galaxy's history. The Ancient Ones brought with them knowledge and technologies that revolutionized the Federation's understanding of the universe. Their temporal manipulation abilities, combined with human dimensional folding technology, had opened up possibilities for exploration that extended beyond the current galaxy. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now heading the Federation's Advanced Research Division, was coordinating the most ambitious project in galactic history: the construction of a trans-galactic gateway that would allow exploration of neighboring galaxies. The project required resources and expertise from every member species, representing the ultimate expression of cooperative achievement. "We're not just building a gateway," she explained to the assembled representatives on Unity Station. "We're proving that there are no limits to what we can accomplish when we work together." The ceremony marking the completion of the gateway's first phase was attended by beings from across the galaxy. As the massive structure powered up for its initial test, reality itself seemed to bend around the convergence of technologies that had been brought together for this moment. Admiral Morrison stood with his old comrades from the original crisis, watching as the gateway opened a window to distant galaxies filled with unknown civilizations and infinite possibilities. "They tried to trap us on 47 worlds," he said quietly. "Instead, they freed us to explore the entire universe." Ambassador Veltar, whose people had initiated the crisis that led to this moment, looked through the gateway at the swirling nebulae of a distant galaxy. Perhaps that was always the purpose, he mused. Perhaps the universe itself arranged events to bring us together, to create something greater than any of us could have achieved alone. Dr. Rebecca Walsh, now serving as the Federation's chief diplomatic officer, activated the communication system that would broadcast to every world in the Federation. "Citizens of the galaxy," she began, echoing her words from 5 years earlier. "Today, we take our next step into the infinite. We go not as conquerors but as explorers, not as separate species competing for resources, but as one people seeking knowledge and understanding." As the first exploration ships passed through the gateway into unknown space, they carried with them the lessons learned from humanity's greatest crisis. The species that had tried to trap humans in a cage of false promises had instead inspired the creation of a civilization dedicated to breaking down all barriers between thinking beings. The trap had failed completely. In its place stood something no one had dared to imagine: a galaxy where cooperation had replaced competition, where diversity was strength, and where the greatest adventures lay not in conquest, but in discovery. The universe was vast, filled with countless civilizations and infinite mysteries. The Galactic Federation was ready to meet them all, not as enemies to be defeated or resources to be exploited, but as potential friends in the greatest adventure of all, understanding the cosmos and humanity's place within it. In the end, the aliens had been right about one thing: humans were dangerous, but not in the way they had feared. Humanity's true danger lay in their infectious optimism, their stubborn belief that any problem could be solved through cooperation and understanding, and their absolute refusal to accept that conflict was inevitable. They had turned a trap into a doorway, a crisis into an opportunity, and a galaxy divided into a civilization united. The greatest human victory was not military or technological but philosophical, proving that the universe was big enough for everyone.